Welcome to Dune, chapter by chapter. I'm Dominic. So in the last chapter, we had to deal with everything that went down with Gurney Halleck and him thinking that Lady Jessica was the traitor, and all that stuff happened. So that chapter ended with Paul. He couldn't see that situation with Gurney Halleck in any of his moments of prescience, and he kind of reasoned that his body had accumulated so much spice that he kind of maxed out on it. He couldn't go any further with the spice melange as far as his visions of the future goes. So he'd almost hit like a dark wall. So he needs to find some way to break through that, because now is a very pivotal time. They had gotten information that the Beast Rabban, he had sent out for reinforcement for more troops to his uncle and all that, and was denied. So Rabban's basically cut off from the rest of House Harkonnen, and they have him up against the ropes. So this is a big moment for the Fremen to strike back at Rabban. But Paul needs to be able to have this ability to see into the future, and he almost feels he's almost become too dependent on it as a leader and all that. So he decides to take a big gamble here at the end of the last chapter. He's going to take the water of life, which, as we know from previous chapters, that any male who has ever taken the water of life, who has ever tried to transmute the water of life, it's only trained Bene Gesserit can do it, that every man that has ever tried has died. So Paul is going to try it. So now this chapter picks up where Jessica has sent for Chani to come to the Cave of Birds. And so she's quickly brought there. Word was sent, she thinks, from Paul himself, but it was actually Jessica sent word. And so it's kind of interesting at the beginning of the chapter as they're talking. Jessica is trying to prepare Chani for what has happened to Paul. Because now at this point, they have found Paul in the Cave of Birds, and they thought he was dead. But Jessica was able to detect a very slim bit of life in him after what had happened to him. But nobody knows yet that he has taken the water of life. So they all assume that some assassin has made their way to Paul and he's been poisoned. So it's been 3 weeks. People are saying that she's not thinking rationally, that Jessica's thinking now as a mother, not as a reverend mother, and she's refusing to give up her son's water for the good of the tribe. But the Fedaykin, they believe that Paul is in some kind of holy commune, and they will listen to every command Jessica gives them. So they have been able to, they're kind of acting as a barrier against this. So when Chani gets there, they kind of go a little bit back and forth, small talk, not really small talk, but it's like Lady Jessica is kind of softening Chani up for the news. And to the point where Chani finally says, okay, what is it you summoned me here for? Why am I at this cave? What's happening? She knows something's up with Paul. Well, so then Lady Jessica tells her, well, Paul's been poisoned. We've been able to, sense that he's been poisoned, but he's not dead, but he's in a very deep coma that almost resembles death. And so she brought him here to somehow help revive Paul. I need you to help me revive him. And Jessica says it's very important she put that word out, revive. That means Paul is still alive. He's not totally dead. He's not dead. He's just mostly dead. So big difference between mostly dead and all dead. With all dead, you go through the pockets and look for loose change. That's all you can do with all dead. If anyone ever seen The Princess Bride, you know what I'm talking about. So she goes in there, and so looking at Paul, and then Chani kind of figures out something, because Paul never ever, these were a lot of rituals with the water of life was held at this cave, and Paul never ever went to any of them, kind of avoided them. And so it was odd that he was here. So she kind of comes to the realization, no, Paul wasn't assassinated. Someone didn't poison him. Paul did this to himself. This is something exactly Paul would do, would come and take the water of life. So she tells Jessica to get her some of the water of life, and she gets it and dips her finger in it and puts it against Paul's nose, and he actually twitches. So then Jessica first movement out of him for a long time, so Jessica's taken aback. Then she rubs some more of it inside of his mouth. So then she tells Jessica, you have to transmute this poison right away. So just before Jessica goes to do that, as she takes her first sip, Paul pops awake. Says, no, she doesn't have to do it. I'm here. Took a small drop of the water of life, he tells him, and I was able to transmute it. And then he's wondering, well, how did Chani get here so fast? What are you guys looking at me so strange for? And then they tell him, well, it's because, you've been in a coma for 3 weeks. But Paul says, oh, that's impossible. I just took that like 3 minutes ago. So he's been like gone. He's gone out there. This is like some heavy stuff he took. And so now he's broken through that barrier. And they ask him, can you still see the future? And he says, I can see the future, but I can see so much more. I can see like the now. I can see everything that's happening right now. So his senses have expanded. And so now he wants his mother to show me that I need you to show me that place where, the women cannot look. The Bene Gesserit cannot look. So he takes up some more of the water of life in his hand and drinks it, and grabs his mother's hand and then shoots his awareness somehow in through her, and almost like forces her to show him that place of darkness where all the Bene Gesserit cannot look. They fear that place. They can't go there. So Paul looks there, and the way Frank Herbert describes it in the book is almost like this weird psychedelic trip with all these different shapes and lights and all this kind of thing going on. But here's the thing about this, and I've read Dune like a few times now, and every time I get to this part, I'm going to be honest, and there's a few things, I've talked about it since I've been doing this series, there's a few things in Dune that I can't quite wrap my head around, and this is one of them. I'm not exactly sure what Frank Herbert is talking about here, I'm going to be honest, when he talks about that place that no one can look. So it's kind of described in the book as an ancient self, like there's deep ancient forces in people, and so the reason why the Bene Gesserit can't look there is because the deep ancient force inside of women is a giving force. Whereas men, the deep ancient force deep inside of them is a taker. And so the taking is what scares the giver kind of thing, and that's why the women can't see back in the past. So I've thought about this lots, and I've heard other YouTubers give explanations for it, but never really heard. I don't know if anyone really knows what Frank Herbert's talking about here, but it's talking about, I don't know, I guess the only way I could think of it as is, some really primal force that, was really strong with people in the past as they were, primitives and they were evolving. So the ancient force of man would be to take, because he had to go out and hunt and take things and conquer other tribes, I guess. So it's a very primal, straightforward way of thinking or something. It's the most baseline way of thinking, where women had to care for children and stuff like that, so they're like more giving. I don't know. That's kind of what came in line. I might be way off base, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll be honest. This one, I kind of get lost on this one, but this is the thing about this book that has always fascinated about me. All these strange ideas that are almost like puzzles you gotta unwrap and try to interpret, where it's you kind of get the sense there's so much more going on in this book and all the other Dune books, as opposed to a lot of other science fiction. It has some really deep out there ideas. So that's the thing I never really could figure out, is exactly what Frank Herbert is talking about. Now, I heard Comic Book Girl 19 talk about this, and she said it was different DNA, where the men had the Y and the X, and they could look down through both genetic lines, where women only had the Y or the X, or whichever one women have. But that doesn't sound like this in this chapter, so I'm not sure what it is. But I'd be curious, anyone in the comments section, to give their take on this scene and what they think it is and what they think Frank Herbert is talking about. So now Paul comes out of this, and then he comes up with he tells him his ultimate plan. He tells him he has like prescience now. He can see just not only into the future, but he can see the now, past, the present, and into the past and into the future. So he's almost like, his awareness is, he's everywhere now. So like the legend says, he can be everywhere at once. So he now knows that Arrakis is surrounded by guild ships. The Emperor is there. The Baron Harkonnen is there. 5 legions of Sardaukar is there with the Emperor. All the reserves, all the men the Baron Harkonnen could get. And all these great houses are there because the gilding, the guild has dropped the rates to transport military and all that. So all these ships are there. All these other houses are there, ready to strip the Atreides clean of whatever they got. So the guild, they are threatened by Paul big time. And the guild, because they know what's going on, because the guild has prescience too, because they're always taking the spice. They use the spice. They have to have prescience. That's how the Space Guild navigators actually navigate through space, as they can see all these multiple timelines before them, so they can see all the possible routes a ship can take through fold space to get them to where they need to go. So that's how they're able to navigate through fold space, is because of their prescience. So they know what Paul's doing. They know something's up. There's a big threat to the spice productions and the spice melange. So Paul tells them they're all here. Everyone's here. Everyone's at the party now. And he tells them, I want you to get some of the water, from the water of life, in some kind of a container, and then plant it on a pre-spice mass. And so Chani and all, they freak out at this. And, what do you mean you can't do that? And the reason why they freak out, because the water of life is poison. If they put it on a pre-spice mass and it erupts, it'll spread that poison through all the little makers. It'll kill all the sand trout, and then it creates almost like a cataclysmic cycle that will go through the worm's life cycle and kill them all. And if all the worms die, all the spice is gone, and the Spacing Guild civilization is over. Because it's so, spice is so dependent upon by the by all the great houses in the guild and the empire. This is how everything keeps going. And if you shut down spice, civilization basically stops and everyone's stranded. It would be like, think of it, if someone had the ability here on Earth right now to snap their fingers and all the oil on Earth vanishes. That person is going to be the most powerful person on the planet without a doubt, and they're going to be calling all the shots, because that's what keeps our civilization right now going, is oil. Everything revolves around oil. Most of the wars are fought over oil, and all the deals are made over oil. All the countries with the most oil can influence other countries. It's what makes everything tick and go around and work. And so if you control that, if you could shut that off, you would control the entire world. So spice is kind of an analog to oil. That's kind of what spice represents in Frank Herbert's book. It's kind of like a parallel to what oil is here on Earth. So that's how this chapter wraps up with that. So it's a cool moment, and I really am looking forward to seeing this scene or something like it in if we get part 2, which seems like, because it's doing pretty good in the box office, seems like we will get a part 2 to Denis Villeneuve's Dune. And then I hope they actually show it. They show like a shot of space with all these guild Highlanders all surrounding Arrakis, and that would be just crazy to see. So hopefully we get that. But interesting chapter, and I'd be curious to know what everyone's opinion on this looking into the place where no one else can look and all that kind of thing. Now, let me know in the comments section if you know what he's talking about, or you have an idea what he's talking about. I'd be curious to hear it. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one.